Please welcome Vivek Ramaswamy, entrepreneur and candidate for Ohio governor.
More hair.
What do you think?
Good
Now,
to see you,
if
man.
you look at that date, September 20th, 2015, that's 10 years ago yesterday. So I hear
How about that?
It was meant to be. Yeah, the hair, man.
From under 30 to over 40. You
Barely over 40.
Does that to you, yeah.
Barely over 40. But yeah, now so it's the 10th anniversary of you being on the cover of Forbes. And then 10 years ago next month, you made your debut at Down There 30 Summit. And here's a picture again.
Oh, yeah.
But you're about, how tall are you? About 6 feet tall?
That's 6 feet, yep.
With that hair, maybe 6'4". Anyway, you were a big hit then, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of it now. Before we go back to talk about that in your journey, I do want to talk. The last time you and I sat down was about 3 years ago, and I have a clip of that, and I want to play it right here. Volume. 2024, election coming up. Everyone wants to know the answer from somebody on this stage about running. Vivek, are you going to run for Senate in 2024 in Ohio?
I can confirm that I will not be running for dog catcher, president, or Senate of the United States. But I think people are waiting to hear that from somebody, another person.
All right, let's get that out of the way.
I don't get the suspenseful moment off.
2024.
I will not make the same confirmation, Vivek. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it.
All right, so that's you, me, and Mike Pompeo. That was 4 months before you announced and you meant it. I could see on stage. I said it was kind of a joke, where I was like, I'm going to ask you because really everyone wants to know if Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, is he going to run for president? So I kind of set you up for the joke, and you're like, I'm not even going to run for dog catcher, much less president or senator from Ohio. And then 4 months later, you declare for president. What changed? Because you meant it there.
I think I confirmed I wasn't running for Senate. I mean, look, I think I made the decision in January of, 2023. And I'm not
October 2023.
Yeah, I'm not a dither around person. I remember my wife and I, we sat down, felt called. We spent a lot of time over that Christmas and that holiday thinking about what we were going to do for the future of the country. Once I decided in January, I was in February. It was very much a fire first, aim later decision. And to me,
what was the moment?
Yeah,
the 2 months. That change came 2 months after that talk. What was the epiphany?
A few months after that talk. I think for me, it was the fact that there was only going to be so much I was going to be able to change through the private sector. So I founded Roivant, the biotech business that you and I have spent years talking about. I then founded a financial services business called Strive to push back against what I thought was cultural overreach in corporate America. We can talk about that in the ESG movement and otherwise. But I realized that if I really cared about changing the country in the maximal way possible, the best way to do it was probably to lead the country as an executive. Use that executive skill set. For me, it wasn't going to be a good cutout to be in Congress or be in the Senate, but to use that executive skill set to lead at the highest level possible. Rick Scott, he's the governor and senator from Florida. He's an entrepreneur as well. So he's a guy who I talk to a lot. And he gave me a piece of advice around that time. He said, you really want to have a big impact. He'd built $1 billion healthcare business as well. Run for the biggest office you can, the highest office you can that you think you can actually win. And I think I took that advice a little too literally, but declared for president in February.
What was it? Tell us about the journey, especially coming from an entrepreneurial background. What was that like, that kind of roller coaster? I mean, you've had, a heck of a year. So
yeah, I mean, look, I think running for president was the ultimate entrepreneurial journey. And for me, I didn't have a pre-existing political organization, but it was very much a familiar environment of building something from scratch. And one of the things I've learned about myself in my journey as an entrepreneur is that I love that early stage the best. It's my favorite part of a company's journey is that first couple of years when you're putting the team together, picking the people, setting the vision. I actually started Roivant and led that company as CEO for 7 years. But since then in business, I've been a serial founder, involved for the first couple of years, identify a CEO, and then move to the next thing. So for me, the presidential campaign was probably the single most challenging of the journeys that I had taken on, but the one I probably learned the most from as well.
Were you surprised? People really took to you doing that. Were you surprised at the success you had kind of initially? Because when you first announced, it was kind of like, oh, and this random entrepreneur is running, and then you really kind of caught on.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we beat, over the course of that campaign, multiple senators, former governors, a former vice president. I would say that I exceeded everyone else's expectations except my own. I wouldn't have entered it if I didn't think we were going to succeed in the journey. But I think we succeeded in other ways in shaping the terms of the debate. And also, frankly, I think I'm a better prepared leader now, having done that and learned a lot more over the last year than I was even when I embarked in my journey to run for president. So I think leading as a governor would be a good next step, for sure.
I want to talk about that first. Before, so you announced for governor in January, right?
Yeah.
After the election, you and Elon Musk were, President Trump announced you as the leaders of DOGE.
Yep.
And then it kind of didn't take. What happened there?
Well, look, I think that I spent 2.5 months, made what I thought were some hopefully useful contributions in setting the direction of it. That being said, I guess I assume only got 8 minutes, so I'll give you the short version. The short version is I learned something about myself, and I think it's probably true for several of the other guys involved there too. I don't make for particularly good number two. That's why I've always said I was going to run for an executive position. A lot of the things that I wanted to get done through DOGE, cutting red tape, thinking about even paring back meaningful parts of excess government spending, I actually thought I was better positioned to do from the bottom up at a state level, leading from the front with my own vision. I still think there is a major opportunity and necessity to cut the national debt, to cut overwrought federal spending, and to cut federal regulations that I think are impeding the economy. But I have my vision of what the right way to do that would be, and I wish success to the current administration in seeing it through.
So if the goal is to run for the highest office you can win, why run for governor of Ohio versus go back and be an entrepreneur? I mean, again, you have a lot of, like you said, you have between Strive and Roivant, you have other ventures going on. Why you caught the bug, or what is it?
Well, look, I think I feel called to serve in some way to create the revival of capitalism. So as an entrepreneur, you're a participant in that system of American capitalism, and I've founded several companies, which we can talk about another time. But I worry we're entering this era where capitalism is no longer popular in America, where socialism, especially amongst young people, probably not the people in this room, but the generation of people in this room is now more popular than capitalism. And I think that that's partly because of the policy backdrop we live in. I mean, you said we're entering the new AI era. One of the things you've got to think heavily about is a lot of Gen Z, white-collar jobs that people are getting when they graduate from college are going to be completed by AI in a few years, if not already. What does that future actually look like? And to me, I think capitalism 2.0, the next wave of capitalism, is going to have to involve the next generation of young Americans participating in that equity upside as owners. And I have some ideas, published on, we're going to talk more about. But I wouldn't be able to do that as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you're focused on your unique mission, building your unique product. In terms of having fun, it's probably more fun than being in politics. I will tell you that. So that'd be my advice to all of you.
Fewer headaches.
And I would also advise you not to go into politics too early in your career, even if you do want to make a change. Go do something productive. Go actually build something that doesn't actually exist. Build it yourself without the government getting in your way. But for me, having done that, I want to help create the fertile field in our country, starting with our state, where those entrepreneurs are actually able to thrive rather than heading what I worry is an increasingly socialist direction in the United States. And I think that's the direction we're heading unless we have leaders who step in and actually stand up for the greatest system known to the history of man to lift people up from poverty, and that's American capitalism.
Listen, at Forbes, the Bible of capitalism, I think a lot of it is branding, where capitalism is a dirty word, but entrepreneurship is a great word, and I think part of
I
that.
think both of them are great words.
I agree with you, but I think in terms of right now in public perception, if you poll people, entrepreneurs, small business is good, kind of big business or Wall Street is bad. How do we get that entrepreneurial vigor? How do we? Again, a lot of it is the perception that everyone has a shot. I mean, I think that's part of what's going on here is people want to know that they got a fair shot.
Well, the reason people feel like they don't have a fair shot is in many ways they actually structurally don't. You think about the education system right now. Education is the key to the kingdom. And yet, 45% of students in most public schools across the country, including in Ohio, cannot actually be reading comprehension proficient by the end of third grade. I mean, that's the single juncture in your journey where if you go from learning to read to reading to learn, If you make that transition, you're going to succeed in life. If not, your chance of achieving success in life falls off a cliff like a rock. And yet we have an education system that typically determines whether or not you succeed in life based on your zip code. That's not right. It doesn't make sense. Back to your question of why I'm running for governor, that's where even more than a president, you can make a difference in setting up that education system. So to me, the key to the kingdom is twofold. One is fix the education system, including bringing standards to public education. And then the second is, and it's a little different than what you hear in the usual right versus left debate right now, I want to cultivate a new young generation of Americans who actually have skin in the game, equity ownership, upside in the economic gains that America is able to create. And that's really important. Because what happened with globalization 1.0, you could call it that in the 90s, et cetera, was that, sure, there were a bunch of policies that were expanding the size of the pie, but too many people in the country correctly felt they weren't participating in that upside themselves. As we enter a new AI and quantum computing era, I think it's really important we not make that same mistake again. If you do the math on this, I wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal this morning. If you have $10,000 invested in the S&P 500 on day zero, say it's the day you're born, you are guaranteed effectively to be a millionaire by your 50s, so long as we keep that economic productivity going. And yet, the major difference between the wealthy and everybody else, everybody whose magazine cover you flashed up there, including mine, the major difference between the wealthy and everybody else in this country is whether or not you own an asset that compounds. Well, my view is the best way to combat the popularity of socialism amongst young people is actually to make everyone a capitalist by giving them skin in the game, so we're rooting for the same thing, maximal growth. Instead of fighting over the scraps of a shrinking pie, let's figure out how we actually grow that pie in a way that everyone actually participates. So if we've got education and we've got high-quality education and actual economic participation in American capitalism, I think that creates a brave new frontier for American unity. I think it creates a great new frontier for empowerment for the next generation, and maybe even using quantum computing and AI where you have a generation of people who aren't necessarily, attitudes to work have changed, but people can thrive without working 120-hour weeks, but live lives as balanced parents, as family members, civic engaged citizens who may be time for religion and spirituality while also thriving in a growing economy. That's the vision I would love to create here in Ohio to set a model for the rest of the country.
The states is the laboratory for the country.
Sure.
Let's talk. You use the word unity. It couldn't be more important. Right now we know it's very important. I know Charlie Kirk was a friend of yours.
He was, yeah.
Condolences. He was also a 30 under 30 member of 30 under 30 community. You're going on the turning point tour.
Yeah, I'm going on October 7th. I'm doing one of the events
to Montana, right? So
in his stead, yeah.
Listen, I've always admired the way you, in the same spirit, go and talk to anybody and try.
Yeah.
What can we do? And again, there are people on both sides, but it really has. It feels like it's gotten worse in some ways in the last few weeks in terms of the bifurcation. What can we do for that word unity?
Mm-hmm. Well, here's one thing I've recognized is that I don't think anybody on the right is going to convince someone on the left to be more united, and I don't think anyone on the left is going to convince someone on the right that we need to be more united. So I'm a Republican running for governor. I'm a Republican who ran for president. Here's what I will say is that there's two ways to look at people who disagree with you. One is as enemies who need to be conquered, and the other is as fellow citizens who need to be shown the light, often through persuasion. And I think the more that we as leaders view our fellow citizens as people who we disagree vehemently with, but at the same time still view as our fellow citizens, I believe we're going to achieve unity not by agreeing with each other on everything. That will never happen. By the way,
we actually don't want it to happen.
We don't want it to happen. I mean, you said you're going to be meeting your spouses here later today. I hope that happens for many of you. You're never going to agree with your spouse on everything either, okay? But you still get together in the same household at the end of it. And, I think the answer is actually going to be more conversation, not less. And I'll close with a little story from my own tour of Ohio this year is whenever we've had protesters, my rule of thumb is we go out and we talk to them. There was one event where there's a woman who is a Vietnam War veteran, it turns out. She's protesting my event outside on a hot Saturday afternoon because she thinks that I am running to cut her veterans' benefits. Total falsehood, have no idea where she got it. What we did is we invited her in that night. We said you could sit at the head table. It's a Republican event. It's a Democrat protester. She joins us inside. Actually, turns out that she loosens up over the course of the evening. And at the end of it, we surprised her by calling her up on stage and saying that she could tell the audience anything they wanted to hear. And the audience recognized her as a Vietnam War veteran. They applauded for her. She had conversations with tens of people that evening who she otherwise would have never talked to if she stayed on the other side of the boundary, the other side of that wall on the outside. And by the end of it, I don't think she converted to, my beliefs on a bunch of political questions. But she looked at the audience and said, you know what, you've all changed my perspective on Republicans tonight. And I think she probably changed the audience's perspective on the protesters that night. And so to me, that's what true national unity looks like, is it's a commitment to disagree, but to disagree in the right way with mutual respect. And whether you're running a company with a team that challenges you, or whether you're running a country with people who disagree with you, or a state with people who challenge you, to me, that's America. That's who we are at our best, and I hope we can set an example.
There's no doubt. It's so important. We do have, even if you look at the president, even the vice president here from Ohio, Elon Musk, who, you were working with at DOGE, even at the top, and again, it's both sides, but I'll talk about it from it does seem, though, that it is not getting better. Again, I think people like you are part of the solution. So how can this group, aside from embracing that ethos, how can we bring some of those folks who are trying to, how do we not use the word they? How do we get rid of that word? How do we get rid of the other, the idea of the other, as a leader?
I think some of it, there's multiple different levels. Okay, one is, I think the more we see the revival of, it's not necessarily one religion, but spirituality in the country, I think that's actually going to be a good thing. It's very hard to see your fellow neighbor as an enemy if you realize, I believe, that God resides in each of us. That's maybe beyond our pay grade for today. I think that even when you build your companies, one of the things you ought to do is also surround yourself with people you disagree with, or who will challenge you, not even about politics, but about your business strategy. I hired one such person at Roivant. It turns out that he disagrees with me also on politics, but he is brilliant. He was a physics guy when I was a biology guy. We overlapped in college at Harvard. He became the CFO. Eventually, when I made the decision to step down as CEO to speak my mind as a conservative, right, against a lot of what I saw as ESG and social justice overreach in corporate America, I put my filter on to say who's the best person to lead the company and making my recommendation to the board. And it turns out it was a guy I deeply disagree with on politics, but who I felt was the best person to lead that company to its next stage. Turned out to be a really successful decision. The company has thrived even in the years after I left as well. And yet we still spar. The two of us still spar at it privately as friends. And to me, that's the best you can do, is number one, surround yourself by people who don't just reinforce your pre-existing assumptions, but who are actually willing to challenge them. That makes you better as a leader. And the second thing I would say is when you're the only person in a room who believes what you do, have the courage at the same time to stand up and say it. We're not going to unite by sweeping our disagreements around the rug and having a fake kumbaya. We're going to do it by disagreeing strongly with conviction, but with respect. That's what our founding fathers did, by the way. People forget this thing, live in this unique moment of national division. It's actually not true. All the way back to the founding of our country, these were people who butted heads vigorously. Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, one of them died at the hands of a duel. Like literally, these are the politicians of their age. So in some sense, it can give us hope, right? If prior generations have gotten through that type of bitter division but still created a nation stronger, I feel like this is going to be one of those bumps in the road that we look back at in the future and still say we were stronger because of it.
A quick case study then, listen, I think what can unite and does unite, if you talk about the American dream,
which we don't even talk about anymore.
We should.
Yeah.
Who isn't for the American dream? Part of what I think your story is, you're the child of immigrants.
Yes.
How do we, immigration now, and even a lot of folks in your party, there is a, and we're not even talking about illegal immigration. We're talking about legal immigration. How do we turn down the temperature and remind people that this is a country of immigrants? People like you are here in part because this is a country that was built on immigration.
Yeah, look, I just want to, because you brought up a couple of things. I speak for myself. I'm Vivek Ramaswamy. Right. I'm not anybody else but me, okay?
Right.
So let's just, I think we sometimes in politics try to put people into categories based on the letter they have after their name.
Quite the
R or
opposite, I
B.
think.
I speak for myself.
No,
That's
think
the way I look
people
at it.
like you, we need people like you to bring in some fresh thinking.
So sort of in that spirit, I think the beauty of this country is that unlike every other country in human history, we're founded on a set of ideals that brought together a divided, diverse, polyglot group of people over our 250-year life. And the thing that makes our country different is that any one of you could move to Italy for the rest of your life, and you would still never be an Italian. Think of all those places you went around the world, right? You could move to Germany, and you would never be a German. You mentioned you're Hong Kong. You could move to China. You would never be Chinese. You could spend the rest of your life in Tokyo. You would never be Japanese. But you can move from any one of those countries to the United States of America, and you can still be an American, as long as you pledge allegiance to the ideals of this country, as long as you work hard, make your contributions, play by the rules. You get to have a good life, dream for an even better life for your kids, and speak your mind at every step of the way. That's the American dream. There's no British dream. There's no German dream. It is the American dream for a reason. That is the essence of this country. E pluribus unum, on the back of our coins, right? Think about that. Representation of capitalism.
Out of many, one.
From many, one is enshrined in the symbols of our exchange in American capitalism. That, too, is what brings us together, is this idea of economic prosperity, growth, and even capitalism as a unifying force. So that's our country at its best. And are you going to find certain voices in both political parties? And I have my views on which one is, worse or better on this, but are you going to find voices in each political party that dissent from that view? Of course you will. But my view is that's what makes America distinctive, that we are a great nation founded on a set of ideals that unite us. I understand, especially when a lot of young people will look at the country, you could question, do those ideals still actually exist, like in a true way? Do they exist when somebody who's expressing himself freely on a college campus is shot in the neck in cold blood for expressing his opinion? When you graduate from college with burdened college debt and you can't get a head start on the American dream because a home's too expensive to afford by the age of 30, and you thought you were getting ahead when, in fact, banks back in 2008 were getting bailed out. Many people in my college class are still paying down their college debts. I understand why many young people are skeptical of that American dream, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means that we have to do the hard work of actually reviving it. I think the entry into the AI and quantum computing era gives us, in many ways, if we do this right, there are risks, but if we do this right, a fresh start to enhance American productivity, to enhance the rate of economic growth. This time around, let's do it in a way where we have, I would hope for universal upside participation in what we create. And there's nothing that unites the country more, Randall, than people feeling like they're actually economically well off and able to make their own ends meet. That's a pretty big down payment on cultural unity as well, and that's something I think we could deliver.
I think that's something worth touching on, and that I think there's an 80% supermajority that believes in those sentiments. I do think the American dream, if people feel like they have a stake and they have an opportunity, I think this country will be unifying just fine. Two last questions, then I'll let go. What have you learned as a 30 under 30 alum who's continued to do exceptionally well? What are the lessons of being kind of a young entrepreneur? When you were on the 30 under 30 list, what have you learned that has helped? What's the biggest lesson as a young entrepreneur that you've taken forward?
I think you need to have a unique combination of two attributes that don't often go together. And it's really hard to embody both of these things at the same time. On one hand, you have to be really ambitious and confident in yourself to achieve those ambitions, and on the other hand, you have to have humility as well. And those two things they would seem like really odd characteristics. On one hand, you believe in an idea when nobody else does. It's your job to convince the employees who want to come work with you, the capital providers who want to back you, the customers who want to try your product. No one's going to have conviction in your vision if you don't yourself. And by definition, if you're an entrepreneur, you're creating something in the world that does not otherwise already exist. But to pair that with also the humility to know along the way that occasionally we as human beings, we're wrong. That's who we are. We're fallible human beings. Those are two attributes that don't go well together, but put them together, it's like rocket fuel. And the second attribute, that's the way you can't deal with that yourself because it's cognitive dissonance, right? You can't at once be ambitious, supremely confident while also being humble enough to question your own proposition. The way you do it is by surrounding yourself, as I said earlier, with people who will serve that function to you. And true friends, they don't just tell you what you want to hear. True friends actually tell you the truth. That's how you know the difference between somebody who cares about you versus somebody who cares about themselves. Because you're going to have, especially in politics, but it happens even in business as you achieve success, you have a lot of people that are just stroking your ego and telling you what you want to hear. And for me, I've developed a pretty good radar for that. My antenna are up for people who are saying the kinds of things that, that they may believe that would flatter a person like me. Beware of those people. And instead seek out the people who are mission aligned with you but still brave enough to question you. Don't let them erode your confidence at the same time. Combine ambition and confidence with humility. That's rocket fuel for success.
Good advice. Last question, because I want to put it on the screen sometime in the future. You get elected governor of Ohio in 2026. Would you consider running for president again in 28 or beyond?
I mean, one of the things I've learned is like every time you sort of make a plan for yourself. This is the other piece of advice I would give you as an entrepreneur. Your plans are stupid. I'm sorry, your personal life plans. Because the reason why is it never goes according to that plan anyway. And so, I think the correct answer is supposed to be, no, I will never do such a thing and whatever.
That's never the honest answer.
But the honest answer actually is, I am genuinely heart of heart 100% focused on what we can do in Ohio. I think we have so much to do here that even my best way of making a contribution to the entire country is to do the best possible job we can in the heart of the country. By the way, I think this is the new Silicon Valley was yesterday. It's the Ohio River Valley where you are is tomorrow. To demonstrate, thank you, an example for the rest of the country. And, I think many of you will hopefully build your businesses here, make your lives here. I lived in New York City. I went to college on the East Coast. I truly believe that a place like Ohio was America's first frontier. I want to make it America's next frontier. And if I never did anything else in politics in my life but to get that right, that alone would be a major accomplishment that I think helps our country too.
Well, again, if you get that right, it takes care of a lot of things and it probably answers a lot of these questions. Appreciate your time. I mentioned that I really do believe that somebody in this room, whether it's here or out there, will be president of the United States someday. And let's see how it goes in Ohio. But that is at the end of the day, the states as the laboratory for America. We look forward to seeing, assuming you get elected, what you do here. But we appreciate you coming out.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you all get up and do too. Right? You can make our generation. You could put us to. I don't want to say put us to shame, but make us look humble by comparison to what you're going to do in an era where the toolkit available to you, from life sciences to computing, is fundamentally different than even what I had in my coming of age as an entrepreneur. So I'll say president or not or governor or not, it will pale in comparison to what the people in this room and their generation are going to do for our country. And at this point, it's up to you guys, all right? We're counting on you. Do your part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.